What's going on, guys? Zane here, back with another video. For this one, we're going to go over the reverse integer problem on Leet code, question number 7. So we're basically passed in an integer, and our task is to reverse it and output it to the console. And that's it. The only caveat here is it should be a number that is the minimum max value, so like -2 billion or whatever it is, and the maximum value would be the max integer value. So it's always going to be an integer value that we're going to be outputting. It's not going to be a long. Anyway, so our task is also to take into account if there's any negatives and make sure that the negative stays, but the value itself is reversed. If it's a 0, then we'll just return the number without the 0. Anyway, so how are we going to tackle this? Well, we could do some while loops, but I've personally found that a little bit. I try staying away from while loops. Just from my experience, while loops have the possibility of getting all messed up in your code and causing inefficiencies. So I'm going to go with the string builder route. So what we'll do is we'll create a string builder rather than a string. And the reason for that is because we can use certain methods like reverse and toString and append and all that fun stuff. So let's use a string builder to convert this number into a string and then work from there. So I'm going to create a string variable and we'll call this int toString. And this is going to be a new string builder object. And to the string builder, we're going to append the value of x. Now we want to account for the actual value itself, ignoring the negative just for now. So we'll just say math.absolute of x. Now that we've appended that value, we need to also reverse it, and conveniently there's a method for that. We can just type reverse, and then we'll need to also convert this to a string, so toString. And the reason we're converting it, even though we're declaring it here as a string, is that x is not actually a string. So we need to make sure that it becomes a string at the end of this. So once we do that, we have a string of our integer, and it's reversed. So if we were to actually return the int toString, int toString variable, technically this would work out. So if we actually run this, return int toString, let's see what, I need to actually parse this, but ignore what I'm doing right now. I'm actually going to just show you that it would work. So once we parse the integer and run this, this should work. But once we submit this, I know for a fact it's not going to work, and I want to explain why. So we already have a string, and that's just a reversed integer, which is great. Now, there's going to be cases where there's going to be negatives. There's going to be cases where there's probably a large value, and we need to account for that. So what we could do is we can do a check. So if the value is a negative number, like this right here, we'll do something else. So if x is less than 0, meaning it's negative, then what we'll do is we'll return the parsed value of our string. Now this is going to return an error, but just for keeping things, I'm trying to do things a little bit different. We're trying to go through the steps as if you were going through those steps, because I know I was doing the same thing and eventually got to the right answer, but we're going to break that down right now. So if the value is less than 0, then what we'll do is return the integer value, so parse the int of the string, int toString. Now we're going to return this, but we're also going to multiply it by -1. And because we just want the we want the reverse string, but we also want to multiply by -1 to make it a negative. Otherwise, we'll just return the exact same thing, except without making it negative. So actually, just to make sure here, we'll just return 0 if it fails. So let's run this. We have a compiler error, so that's good. We actually don't need this. So let's run this. All right, so that works. Let's submit it. Let's see what happens. So here we have an input string of some very large value. So this is where things get a little, I guess, disheartening, because you have all the checks here, why isn't it working? And the reason for that is because we are compiling and running code on the fly here, in the sense that we're not actually doing any checks other than if the value is less than 0, return this, otherwise return this. Now, our integer up here is already trying to parse something that might not actually be parsable to an int. And for example, this value here is way more than the max value of an integer. And what we can do is max value of an integer, even though we're doing JavaScript here. Let me just get the actual, just so I can explain what's going on here. So when we look at integer max value and min value, the max value right here is 2.147 billion, and the min value is obviously the negative side of that. But basically that number right here is larger than that. So we need to account for that. So let's remove this. What we could do is we can use the try-catch method here. I'm not sure if it's actually called a method, but we'll use a try-catch so that we'll have our program still do the same thing. It'll just catch the exception rather than breaking the code. So we'll say try this, otherwise catch this. So what we'll do is try returning, and we'll do the same exact thing where if x is less than 0, then return the parsing of the int to string variable times -1. Otherwise, we'll do it without the -1. Now, if it does catch an exception of some sort, then we'll just tell it to return 0. Now, in the catch block here, we return the 0, but just specifically for this situation, we need to have something here. And that's just how Java works. So we'll say that there's a number format exception because this value is technically a long value, not an integer. So this is why there's a number format exception, and we'll call it E. Now let's try running this code. And it looks like it went through. Alternatively, and I like using these as, I think they're called ternary functions, where instead of having all these lines of code, we could just say return, and then x is less than 0, question mark, then return integer.parseInt of the int to string times -1. Otherwise, in the same line, we'll return this. And this should do the same thing. Cool, let's take a look at the details. Great. It's not the most optimal solution, but it works and it accounts for all edge cases. And that's about it. So just to recap, we took our integer that we passed into the function, which is what we're given. We turned that into a string and reverse it using stringbuilder. But we're also taking just the value itself, ignoring the negative. Then we do the check for the negative in a try-catch, catching it with a number format exception and returning 0 if it ever hits here, so that the program actually continues running. Anyways, guys, that's it for this one. If you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, or if I didn't make anything clear, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, hit that like and subscribe button, show me some love, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.